Good morning, folks. Want to go ahead and just get us started quickly because Pastor Dana Block Hansen and Pastor Jorgensen need to get over to Evangelical to meet with their congregation also. So basically, I would like to get us started this morning. As we spoke a couple weeks ago, our council approved to move forward in a joint agreement of shared ministry with Evangelical. A lot of the details of that shared ministry, as in percentages and stuff like that, time served, focusing independently on each congregation, will be ironed out. But basically what we're doing today is meeting with you folks, as we introduced it, giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that hopefully we've tried to cover and get as much information out there as possible, but to also give you the opportunity to ask questions to us, to the representatives from the Synod, if there's anything that we can't answer, and get our blessing to move forward and start the call process in the joint ministry or shared ministry focus. So again, we'll be moving in that direction, starting the call process and looking for someone to share a ministry, basically one pastoral leader between the two congregations. We'll have time at each congregation, each office during the week and office hours. But most likely we will start to look at, and some things will be shared to take better advantage of time in some of our committees meeting together and not being so redundant between the two congregations. So that's kind of the direction that we're leading. So basically today I come with a motion from our congregational council to move forward in the direction of a shared ministry with the congregation, or with the ELC. So I guess by rights, we should be, get a second motion from the congregation and then open up for discussion. Can I get a second? Wendy, for a second. And is there any questions or discussion at this time?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Who is going to determine what split we will have? Whether it be is it going to be a 50-50 split in terms of finances and in terms of time?
Traditionally, yes, Doug, that is, but those details can be ironed out also based on financial capabilities of supporting that position. So it may be, like we kind of kicked around, if it sways anyway, it might be 60-40, but that would probably be the largest differential split that we would be talking about.
Well, in a 50-50 split, a pastor would spend 2 days a week in the office at Trinity and 2 days a week in the office at ELC. Am I correct?
I would assume so.
So how do you take that time then into a 60-40 split?
I guess we would just look at office hour time and split it based on that percentage would be my assumption. So if you're talking 16 hours, 16 to 20 hours roughly, we'd be probably doing, 12 hours at, one and 8 hours at the other.
Okay, will we be voting on that later on?
I would assume that would all be part of the final call process once the call process moves to that point and deciding on that factor, yes.
Okay.
I mean, you guys, we will have that vote will come later once we get to the vote of a call.
Personally, I would not go for anything less than a 50-50 split.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we need the time, as ELC needs the time,
Certainly.
to try to grow our congregation. Any idea as to how soon the final decision will be made?
Final decision as in moving forward in this process or the call?
Well, both.
I guess after today, a final decision would be, I guess, at the end of today, as long as Evangelical approves to move forward and we approve to move forward, and then the call process will start. I know the representatives from the Synod had mentioned previously in some of our meetings that they have maybe some potential candidates in mind, but we don't know that detail, and I don't think they've probably put a lot of effort into that until we have a vote to move forward from the two congregations.
Okay, assuming that we will have a shared pastor, right now our services overlap. So what happens in regards to that?
I guess that would be ironed out during the call process with that candidate, or once that call process is completed, to come to a final morning schedule.
Any idea how long it might take to find a pastor to fill the bill?
Okay.
No, because there are other vacant congregations around our synod. So the process used to take a year. Sometimes that is still the case. Sometimes it is much longer. Really what you want to focus on is getting the right person here to help you move forward.
And the final question, and then I'll pass the microphone to whoever would like to have it. What happens if after 5 or 6 or 10 months we find that it's not working out? What action will Synod then take to solve that problem?
One of the things we hope for in every call is that it's going to be a fruitful ministry. Every time someone's called, we seek, to listen for the Spirit, and we seek to discern together. One of the challenges, I will say, is there's always risk in everything we do, although the greatest risk is to do nothing. And I would just say, to do nothing, you would just be staying and waiting. So yes, we will be accompanying you as you learn to work and do ministry together. One of the things we may look at is initially making a 3-year commitment just to see how it works. And it could be, I would add, that it might not. Let's say it's not working great at 10 months, but it might be working great at 20 months. Part of this is that we learn together. We will inevitably have growing edges. And we will inevitably have times where we will be figuring it out as we go. But that's the beauty of ministry, is I would say the church from the beginning has been figuring it out as it goes. So I would be hopeful, and part of this is that both congregations are going to be discerning together. That's part of why you have very fine leadership here, and you have very fine leadership over at Evangelical. And part of this is your leadership teams are going to be working together, figuring some of this out. You will be part of that discernment as well. So this is not something that will happen in a vacuum. But can I guarantee you that 10 months down the road, nothing will, I can't, but I will say this. I've had congregations, most of the time when we build partnerships, they do work. And we've had them work very well. But absolutely, we would be on call, Pastor Dana and myself, that we would still accompany you after you've called your pastor.
My experience has been that once a vacancy is filled, if it's not working out, the Synod doesn't really like to step in and do anything about it. Very good example was Richard Seek's ELC about 8 or 10 years ago. He basically decimated that congregation. And there were a lot of people who had their own celebration when he left without him being there. And this is just a problem which I find with Synod, is when a pastor comes, he or she has instant tenure, and Synod just doesn't really want to do very much about trying to fix it. It's not a question of our leadership. It's not a question of ELC's leadership. It's a question that the pastor just was not a good fit, but refuses to admit it and stays and does what they want to stay. And that's always been a concern.
I wasn't on staff 8 to 10 years ago. That's also a difference. And if we don't know, if people aren't telling us things aren't going well, we don't know, right? Like, okay. 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 Yeah, okay. That's helpful history for me to know because I've been on staff 5 years. And so if things are not going well, you need to let Pastor Richard and I know, okay? That we're going to covenant together to do this together, okay? Pastor Richard, is there anything you want to add to that?
And I think a key word is we're going to covenant together. So part of this is, it's not just sharing a pastor, it's sharing a ministry. And we will have a ministry covenant that would be something made with the pastor, with the congregations, and with our synod staff, that we will be working together for the good.
Thank you, sir. Sure. Are there any other questions at this time?
So, can you hear me okay? All right. So my quick question is, I assume that we're going to probably dissolve both call committees from each congregation, and we're going to develop a new joint call committee. Is that correct?
And I'll invite Pastor Dana to speak to that.
So I wouldn't dissolve them. You may want to narrow down how many people are on them because you're going to work together, right? And so your paperwork and ELC's paperwork will continue so that this person gets a really good idea of what's happening here and what's happening at ELC. And so you might want to whittle down to 3 people at each congregation to move forward. I would have the same amount at each. Whatever that number looks like, it might be 4, but I wouldn't go over 4. Does that make sense? Okay. So you didn't waste time on your paperwork. I don't want the call committee did good work. We're going to use it moving forward. And so I want to honor that as well.
Okay. All right. That was my other question. Was just make sure we didn't have to redo the MSP because that takes some time.
And that's the congregational profile. That's the paperwork you all have been working on.
And I will agree with Pastor Dana, you've already done the work, and you've done it well. And we want to celebrate that, and we also want to use the work that you've already done.
We had a second on your motion. Are we taking a vote?
Once we're done questions, I would hope so. Okay. Having the questions called, all those in favor of moving forward with a shared ministry with ELC, please consent by an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys very much for your time, and we'll look forward to continuing this process.
What's that? You're going to make me.
That would make sense.
And I do want to say thank you for staying for the meeting.